Was this more or less the position that you guys had reached earlier, or
Oh,
it sounded wait?
Absolutely not. His position was the opposite. You convinced him to change his position.
Wait, okay, so what? So why? What has changed? I'm asking either Relevant or the other guy. Yeah, go.
Okay, I think the reason it's changed, and yeah, this is a little bit of bad character on my part, I would admit.
I had a conversation with this individual yesterday about Vaush's response to the critique of Doomerpolitics' video. I think that Vaush handled it incredibly poorly. They believed that they did not, that there was overall not very much good substantiation in the arguments.
Do you think Vaush is not receptive to criticism?
Correct, yes. And I believe that video demonstrated it. But more than anything, I think that his response to that video demonstrated that more than anything. And I think that is like I think that's like logically demonstratable. So he opened, by the way, in poisoning the well on that situation, which was, again, what the video talked about, which is why it black pills me the most on his response to critique. The very first opener that he said to his response to the critique was, well, my initial idea is to just say that this person's a hate watcher, or I think he said either a hate watcher or a DGG fan who just wanted to make a hit piece on me. But you know what? I'm not going to say that. Instead, I'm going to say that, you know what? Maybe there might be some little bits of salient criticisms in here that maybe we can go over, right? So he's starting by poisoning the well. Long story short, Doomerpolitics ended up joining the Discord because, like, Dylan, who was sitting inside of the call, said, hey, you know, we're talking about him. I got him here on the line. You want to let him in? We let him in. And he's in there. We have a discussion. All four of us have a discussion. And then later, right after I guess some context that might be relevant is at the end of it, I gave up on the conversation because we got to a point where in which this person was defending the position that Vaush took, which was when he was called out on clip chimping a 14-second clip of a cop planting evidence. I was like, yo, that's pretty cringe. Like, we shouldn't be doing this shit. And he called out, a chatter called him out and was like, yo, maybe literally the quote was like, this is why we should review evidence. And then Vaush pushed back, no, I think it's cool to jump to assumptions when we're talking about cops.
Like, in this case, this cop wasn't doing that. Just looked like he was doing that, you know? It's good to point out how we need to review evidence. I am okay.
It's good to point out that we need to review evidence. I'm sorry, it's literally worse than I thought. Okay?
Okay, just go on.
That was the claim. It's good to point out that we ought to review evidence. That was
and
the
Vaush
whole claim. And Vaush said,
okay.
I'm okay with by default being suspicious of the cops
by assuming they're wrongdoing because they are very powerful and receive very little accountability
for what they say.
If it turns out
that's a very reasonable thing to say.
Oh my god. And things like that. And I said that's probably not something that I'm really cool with. I feel like we should probably gather a little bit more evidence. And this person pushed back on that, and after like a 2-hour debate with that ending there, I just didn't feel like I could get through to them. So I said that, like, you know, that's that. I don't want to have the conversation anymore. And yeah, and now here we are because they took to Twitter.
Can you give me 30 seconds? Somebody link me a clip. One second.
Sure.
Just listen to this real quick.
Well, the police to prove their innocence. It's not the job of the...
So then just say, then you agree with the idea, we can jump to whatever conclusion we want because it's not our job to review the evidence.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm so glad you fucking bit that fucking bullet, dude. I'm so fucking glad.
Oh, wait, are you talking to this person now when they said, so we don't need to, we can jump to a conclusion without reviewing the evidence?
This is the same person.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess we can talk about that if you want.
Okay then. So I guess because just you're more intelligent than me, I'll probably ask you more questions. So
okay, I don't think anybody's more or less intelligent. I don't think that's. I don't think you have to worry about that. Okay, music school flunky. So what do you got?
Okay, okay. I remember watching a stream of yours. Like, was this 7 months ago? And I think what had happened was there was a police officer, and and there was like an African American. They were chasing an African American, and I think someone was shot or something, and then someone told you the story and you made a conclusion, and then when someone gave you more evidence, you made a different conclusion. I have to admit, like, I was very nervous in that debate, but my main argument is that I think it's very difficult for streamers to, like, not make
Where was this energy
when
for
they're
you?
processing information a lot of the time in live time. And I mean,
isn't that kind of what? Isn't that like kind of the? Well, so firstly, I would need to know which one you're talking about, because usually when I cover breaking news, I try to be like really, really anal about like, hey, we don't know this piece. This could change that. This could change that, because all of that
I know,
can get really hairy.
I know that can make it like so unfair on you, because like I don't remember the exact, like I don't remember the case, because I think like the police were right in this situation, so I think it like died down fairly quickly. But yeah,
interesting how that happens.
So yeah, so do you disagree with my general assertion that
people can rush to conclusions?
That it's difficult for streamers to not rush to conclusions when they're trying to cover news in live time.
Yeah, it can be, but I mean, like, that's not an excuse not to do it, right? If anything, that's an even greater reason to never cover breaking news, I would say. Yeah?
Okay. Do you? So then, so you don't. I'm guessing you don't then think streamers should cover breaking news. I'm guessing.
I don't at all. No. The only reason I do is because it's irritating that I won't over and over and over again, and then I've got to watch people like Hassan or Vaush cover breaking news, and it's always like the most horrendously slanted, biased way possible. And it's like, okay, well, fuck, let's try to inject a little bit more responsibility into the narrative. That's usually how I feel.
Okay, I can accept that. I mean, I would disagree probably as a more left-leaning person. I would probably disagree a little bit more, because I think when you have a political mission, it's important to try and cover breaking news, or if you're arguing for something like just generally racial justice, and you're, I guess, talking about things on the spot, like how stuff happens, like for example with the George Floyd situation.
Sure. I think it is possible to cover breaking news in a responsible manner with a lot of caveats.
I'm way smarter than you.
But Vaush certainly doesn't do that. Like, it's not even close, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that to some extent. I also agree that I think as leftists, we tend to probably be a little bit hyperbolic when we talk about the police. Like, I'm definitely not in favor of like
wait. I want to be really careful and clear with the words we use. So hyperbolic does not mean like making up misinformation. These are two totally different things. So when Vaush covers, so we'll use the example of that one drug or the baggie that he said that one cop planted in that person's vehicle. That wasn't hyperbole. That was not only was that a lie, it was a massive load of assumptions and conjecture that were totally unfounded in reality. So I just want to be very clear that that's way different than hyperbole. Those are two very different things.
Okay, I can accept that. I mean, I can't argue much about that because I don't know much about that situation. Like, I don't even know.
What's one breaking news situation with Vaush that you feel like you watched?
Okay, well, I definitely watched a lot of the live coverage he did of like when George Floyd was originally shot, and a lot of the Breonna Taylor. I think when he covered that live, I think I watched a lot of that. Did you have problems with what?
I didn't watch the George. So to be clear, George Floyd wasn't shot, right? He was choked or whatever.
Sorry. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, that's fine. So I mean, like I play this game with a lot of people. I guess I can ask you a question. Like, do you know where Breonna Taylor was when she was shot?
Okay, from what I understand, she was in her bedroom. Am I correct?
Where in her bedroom?
Okay. From what I know.
Okay, actually, let me just.
Okay. Right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So can you I'm just curious because if you want to pull out of this example, that's fine. Okay, I'm okay with that. But so I asked you for an example, and then you gave me the Vaush coverage. So I'm just trying to follow down with what I think you might be most familiar with.
Okay, so as far as I know, that Breonna Taylor was in her bed when she was shot. That's what I know.
Yeah, sure. So can you just kind of like very briefly kind of walk me through about what you think happened in terms of how did it get to the point where cops are shooting Breonna Taylor in bed or anything?
Okay, so what I know is that cops had a warrant, I think, or they had a no-knock warrant for her boyfriend, was it? And they decided to, of course, from what I understand, storm the house in a way. I guess where they use a thing and they break the door. And so they walk in.
Listen, motherfucker,
from what I know, they end up going into the bedroom because that's where they are. The boyfriend, I think, was the first one to move, and I think was he the first one to shoot? Was he the one to open shots? And then I think the police opened shots. And Breonna Taylor, I think it was found out she was awake, but I think she was still in her bed. Is that the correct? That's what I know. That's the at least version that I know of the events.
Sure.
Or am I still being too broad?
I'm just kind of curious when we talk about police interventions. I'm kind of curious in terms of like what we think is like an appropriate response to the police. There was another shooting that happened around this time, but it wasn't covered as much, maybe because somebody white died. But so I'm just kind of curious, like what your thoughts are on this. So there was a I think this was it was either in like Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, or whatever.
That was his first mistake being
house, white. And it was suspected that in this house there was a hold on one second. Okay. In this house, it was suspected that there was like a meth lab and that people that had lived there prior to this had been working that meth lab, although they didn't know if the person there right now was currently working it. So police show up at this house, and initially they have a no-knock warrant. But by the time they get there, they kind of change their mind. They're like, well, we don't know if we need a no-knock. So the police knock on this door.
Oh no, he's doing it.
I don't really think it matters, but the two people inside this house are like suspected of being I don't know if they were with the Proud Boys or what, but one of these far right groups. So
is he literally doing the exact scenario with Breonna Taylor?
Come to the door
with white people.
And they are listening, and the boyfriend is actually worried that the people knocking on the door are actually like a rival, like drug people that are like pretending to like be the cops so that they can break in and right. So it gets to the point to where now the police report and the people conflict, but they say that there were words exchanged at the door. The boyfriend and the girlfriend end up walking back down this hallway, and then eventually the cops, after not getting any more words back from these people, bust down the door. Now, when the cops bust down the door, the girlfriend's boyfriend immediately shoots at the police, and one cop is struck. And after that cop gets struck, the rest of the cops in the hallway, I think, open fire. There's like 10 or 20 shots down the hallway. And the guy that shot originally wasn't killed, but his girlfriend was killed. And I think that's how that story played out.
Okay.
In terms of like that story, do you think that like as the cops were shot at first, when they entered, they weren't even in the apartment yet? Do you think that it sucks that the girl died, but do you think that there was like a tragedy here or like something outrageous that the cops need to be corrected for?
Okay. I would say no. So I wouldn't argue that the cop should be arrested or put in jail, but I do think a fair public inquiry into the matter should probably be done. I don't know if that's fair. If you think,
I think that's totally fair. Yeah, that's 100% fair. Okay.
And also reviewing like maybe what to do better in like situations next time.
Yeah, I understand. So I'm going to step back a little bit. I 100% lied to you. So what I just told you was verbatim. That was the Breonna Taylor story. She died in the hallway when she was struck multiple times. Her boyfriend opened fire on the cops first. He shot one time. He hit a cop. The cops returned fire, and then Breonna Taylor was killed behind him in the hallway. She wasn't killed in bed. Cops didn't break into the apartment and shoot her and execute her in bed or anything like that. The boyfriend fired first. They were going to serve a no-knock warrant, but they ultimately didn't do that initially. They knocked on the door. The communication wasn't great, and then eventually they broke in. Do you see how like having more facts about the story? Now, I'm not saying that it makes it okay, because there was some behavior that was reprehensible by the officers. For instance, one officer was out in the parking lot who was shooting into the apartments through the window, which was outrageous, and that guy was indicted and charged for it, thankfully, and convicted. But do you see how having a little bit more facts of the story make this story sound a little bit less absolutely insane? Like the idea that a poor woman was like executed in bed by police officers is a little bit different than like officers were returning fire when her boyfriend in the hallway shot at them first.
Absolutely. I can definitely see that. To be clear, I never ever myself made the argument whether the police in the Breonna Taylor situation should be arrested or fined or sacked or anything.
So you've never tweeted or retweeted or anything like that? Anything related to the tragedy of Breonna Taylor being executed in bed by cops? You don't think that's ever?
Okay, and I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure I haven't. Not in that situation, because mainly, I mean, when it came to Black Lives Matter myself, I was mainly concentrated on the George Floyd situation, largely because I think when it comes to criminal justice reform, the George Floyd situation is something that like even moderate conservatives can agree is fairly bad. And I think that situation is the one that BLM should like argue for reform on, because that's like the most clear-cut one of like police misconduct. Yep.
And that is true. Even conservatives that watched that video thought that was bad. And most people seem to agree with that, which is good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like the Breonna Taylor case, if you have somebody that is consistently covering news like this over and over and over again, and you watch 3, 4, 5, 6 different police and black people interactions, and you're getting like these types of tellings of the event, don't you think that that type of like misinformation will eventually like corrode your mind to the point to where you are heavily biased against a certain party without even really a factual basis to be that bias?
I would argue yes, but I know you like, probably because I've heard you say that before you debated, you thought that most people had rational thought. But I think most people, at least most people who should be watching these videos, should be like researching this from more than one source.
Yeah, but like, realistically, that probably doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, that's the disappointing thing, I think.
But even if it was the case that they did research multiple sources, if you watched 5 different lefties, they might all be in unison giving you the wrong take about like a certain interaction because they hate cops so much, as silly as that is to sound. And I guess that's kind of my problem with like the jumping to conclusions thing, is that like, yeah. And my issue is that like, I really don't even care about cops. I just, the overall environment, I don't know how old you are, but in the United States after 9/11, every single time a brown person did anything, conservatives were so quick to be like, that was a terrorist.
Same in Australia.
Time. Yeah. And they constantly want to call, and it's like, wait, bro, we don't know anything about this yet. How the fuck are you like already trying to, fit this narrative in? But I see the thing with cops is like being basically the same type of thing. And that's kind of what worries me about that stuff.
Okay. Do you hold any claim to, I guess, the leftist argument that we should be overly critical more about police because they're an arm of the state than we should be about black people?
Overly critical? In some ways, I think that the job itself carries more responsibility. So like in some ways, yeah, I do. Like I'm going to expect a cop to act with more responsibility because I'm sorry, but police officers have the liability of what they do. That's part of why they're police officers. So yeah, I would agree with you 100% there. But being more accountable doesn't mean that people should be able to just make up facts or assume false narratives about you. That's kind of my problem, I guess, which is something that it feels like Vaush and people on the left do so much.
Right. I mean, I definitely, you know nothing about me, but I definitely have been like critical of like several leftists. I guess, like, I definitely have like my own problems with Vaush. I mean, you probably didn't hear the previous discussion I had, but I did name a lot of my criticisms of Vaush, but I guess they were more on policy than the way he represents the facts. So I can understand how, like, yeah, I can definitely understand what you're saying and how Vaush. I mean, I know you're going to hate me being overly charitable, I guess.
I can't speak.
But how Vaush can go overboard
because he'll say he's ambushed.
He obviously can misrepresent the facts. But I know it sounds like I'm weaseling, but I think Vaush still holds a lot of utility when it comes to online discussion and debate and the content he creates. And I think that's where we're going to disagree.
Well, so my problem, and this is like the biggest thing that I have to deal with, is that as soon as people on the left start engaging in misinformation, doesn't mean he has to lie. It seems like it seems like you've kind of ceded all the fact-based arguments to conservatives. Because now anytime a conservative wants to argue and you're like, okay, hold on, I don't know if this is exactly right, they could be like, what about when that person lied about that and that and that and that and that? And it's like, fuck. Yeah, maybe, right? And now all of a sudden it feels like all of your arguments are neutered because people on your side have already said like, we can ham it up a bit as long as it like suits our narrative, which is something I think is really scary.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I definitely think that leftists have to be more fact-based. Now, I know from like your opinion, you probably think, with maybe the exception of Soakdom Left, that like leftists probably can't do this because of the ideological framings in which they get themselves into. But yeah, I definitely like, okay, I'll give you an example to like, so you at least know where I'm coming from. I think probably the biggest person who does spreads a lot of misinformation who we would consider left would be Kyle Kalinske. I've argued this several times. I think Kyle Kalinske is the worst for this. Where I don't know if we would agree on that, but
probably I hate him more than almost any other commentator.
Yeah, I know. I've been watching you since 2017.
Okay.
But yeah, so I definitely think like it's a problem, and I don't think that Vaush should have reported that the way he did. Yeah, so I would concede that too, Destiny. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Okay, well, wait. So then, okay, Ahrelevant, are you here?
Yep.
Okay, so because you have to tell me if things are changing, because I don't know. So was this more or less the position that you guys had reached earlier, or
hell
it sounded
Absolutely not. His position was the opposite. You convinced him to change his position.
Wait. Okay. So what? So why? What has changed? I'm asking either Ahrelevant or the other guy. Yeah, go.
Okay, I think the reason it's changed, and yeah, this is a little bit of bad character on my part, I would admit, but I think my discussion with Ahrelevant was a lot more hostile than yours and mine is.
That's not what changed. What changed, I'm talking about the position. I don't disagree with you. We were more hostile, but that was after a period of time. For a while, we were doing okay. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. It was more hostile. What changed was you agreed with the position that we should be able to make up a story or a narrative about a cop until more information comes out. That was your position that I was pushing back on. And that's where I drew the line. Because after 2.5 hours of us like butting heads, ending on that point, I just couldn't handle it. I'll fully admit that. I couldn't handle that. So, yeah. That's what changed.
Okay.
Wait, I'm assuming you don't hold that position anymore, right? That's what you just conceded? That we should be able to...
Okay, look.
Looking?
By the time we got to that point, it was... I mean, I did feel like it was a lot more hostile, and I was being backed into a corner. So I pretty much went, you know what? Fuck it. I know that sounds bad. Like, I know this probably sounds really bad, but I did because I felt by that point that Ahrelevant to some extent was arguing with me in bad faith. And I lost interest in actually, I think by that point, arguing a lot of my points.
Wouldn't it be better to just stop talking then and like choose to take a breather from the conversation than make up positions?
What do you mean make up positions?
You said, well, I mean, I'm assuming that you said when you say fuck it, what you mean is that you don't actually hold the opinion. You just said fuck it and just went for it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, it's... Okay, I don't hold... Okay. I hold the opinion that I think it's always going to be difficult and we're always going to have misinformation because people are covering live news. And I think leftists have to, well, to some degree, cover live news. But...
Right, and so...
I do think my biggest point was that I don't think that Vaush should be held to a higher standard than media organizations, because media organizations do often rush to make conclusions. And I've seen several of Destiny's streams where he's like shown media organizations that have rushed to make conclusions before. I just
sure, but if I'm critical of them, I can be critical of Vaush for doing it too, right? It's not like I'm saying we should let one slide and the other not.
But don't you think that someone with a journalist degree and someone who works in media should be held to a little bit of a higher standard than Vaush?
Well, to be honest, real quick, no, I don't think so. I think that our jobs are pretty easy. The amount of, well, in terms of like getting the facts right, like here's something that I've discovered over the past year or two that's just blown my mind. If you read an entire article, like more than 95% of internet commentators and like more than 99.99% of people, and like a lot of the times people. Yeah, people that are like commentators don't even read like a couple articles. Like there are like, fuck, I wish I could remember who I watched seeing this, but like I would bet money on this that if you were to show leftist commentators a picture of Israel and you were to show them the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, that if you were to switch the labels, most of them would think it makes sense and they would call the Gaza Strip the West Bank because it's on the west side. I truly do believe
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. The whole fucking discourse around Israel was so bad.
Yeah, and everything. But the problem is, if we constantly take this like conciliatory tone where it's like, yeah, it happens, people mess up. I don't think it's just people messing up because it's like, oh, like you didn't know precisely where like this neighborhood was. It's more like, oh, you don't even have like a basic accounting of the facts, but you want to come out and give like really hot takes over it. And that's kind of what bothers me, I guess.
I also want extra precision on this because my point of contention was not actually, if you remember, RedTube reviews, the point of contention wasn't necessarily that he got the facts wrong. My point of contention, the whole reason why I brought it up is because when somebody gave him pushback, he doubled down. That was my point, right? That it wasn't just that Vaush was eager and then ran to against the cops. It's that when pressed by a person in chat saying, well, this sounds like we should review evidence, the most benign claim in the world, he said, no, I'm perfectly fine with justify, and then proceeded to justify his actions. That's why I brought that up. And then you defended that. You didn't defend Vaush just making the claim. You defended Vaush also pushing back against the chatter who said maybe we should review evidence.
Okay. If I remember correctly, my argument was that from Vaush's perspective, Vaush believes that he is right in making those claims because they are in a position of authority. That's his argument. That is generally the leftist
So yes, his argument.
And I don't.
Sorry, my bad. I wanted to get more.
No, go on. Ahrelevant.
Okay. No, if you want to go on, you can. I just wanted to a more precise, or to break bread that yes, you are correct. That is a correct thing. He stated very explicitly that he believed that he should be able to jump to an assumption about the police based on a 14-second clip because they hold so much societal power. I don't think that makes it better, but you are correct.
Yeah, I'm going. Yeah, I think. Again, I think by that point, I mean, I was angry. And I think, these are probably not good arguments. I'm willing to admit that this is my first major debate. So yeah, I know these probably aren't good arguments, but yeah.
So do you still hold the position?
And I'm not. Just real quick, in terms of what I'm interested in, I'm not here to crucify you as an individual for a variety of reasons. But I guess it's just more just kind of showing.
Reasons I'm interested.
Well, so my problem is that I think that you can. Fuck.
Yeah.
Hold on, sorry.
It's okay.
Are you still playing Darkest Dungeon?
But there's some guy with a fucking motorbike outside who's rooming super hard. Jesus Christ. Okay. My problem is there's this 2-step process to bad misinformation, okay? Or maybe in 3 steps. I'm thinking of this on the fly, okay? Sorry. I know Vaush likes to list, so I'll try to just list more. So number 1 is you incorrectly identify the facts of the matter, okay?
Okay.
And then number 2 is you extrapolate from those incorrect facts. And then number 3 is that it poisons your entire worldview about future cases. So I'm going to try to give you a clear 1, 2, 3, okay? Mm-hmm. So... Yep. Here is something that happened. There was a cop video where a cop throws a baggie in the backseat with somebody. Did you watch this?
No, I don't think I watched this one.
Okay, well, in the video, all you see is guy's holding the phone, and he looks at a cop throwing a bag in his backseat, and he's like, yo, are you planting evidence? What the fuck? What the fuck?
He didn't watch the video
and
we were
that's it, right? It's about. A minute. And
I don't think I saw Vaush's coverage, but I think I saw this video. I definitely think I saw
it might be,
video.
Yeah. Okay. So when Vaush covered this...
I literally saw this just 5 minutes before stream. A Caledonia police officer appears to be seen on camera attempting to frame a black man with an illegal substance. Appears to be. I mean, this is the most clear cut I've ever seen. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that.
Hey, bro, what's that?
What's what?
That you just threw in here.
What word?
I got you on camera, bro.
I got you on camera. We're all good.
Hey, bro, you just threw that in here.
Yeah.
You got to record every police interaction, my friend. Now, this cop is trained. Take a look at the cop. Look at this. See how the cop turns his chest away from where he's throwing that? That's because he doesn't want his body cam to pick it up. He turns his chest away from it. See? Chest facing that way, drug plant happening this way. He knew. He has it on him. He just, whoop, yep, does a little slippy.
So initially, he has an incorrect accounting of the facts. He says, oh, wow, look, the guy is throwing drugs into the dude's back seat. But then he goes to step 2, all on his own, where not only does he have an incorrect counting of the facts, now he projects from that and he starts reading way more into the situation that's not even there. So he starts saying,
exactly,
wow,
Tommy.
Look at how the cop is twisting right as he throws it in. He's doing that to avoid the body camera catching it. He's been trained to plant evidence.
I remember that.
And then this leads us pretty organically to step 3. Okay, cops are literally being trained around the United States to hide their body cams so they plant evidence. And this is going to taint every future view you have of a police citizen interaction. To where if you ever hear something oh, well, cops found drugs in this person's car, you're like, okay, Maybe, but I also happen to know that cops are trained to plant drugs in people's cars. I watched Vaush show me an incorrect fact and then explain with conjecture that had no basis in reality how cops do this. So like these are the types of things that I'm worried about that like super like fuck our media environment, I think.
Okay, yeah. So I would definitely argue that Vaush probably shouldn't have done that. I would also argue that I'd prefer it instead of Vaush just like saying, well, this is why. At least if you said something, well, in my opinion, this is why this is happening. I mean, I've been critical about this, a bit about this before, that I do think that he should use more in my opinion. Because
sure, but however,
like, be a little bit better.
Yeah, so this is what I try to think as well, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that a black guy is walking down the street. He looks into a car, looks for a second, and then he walks away. Now, let's say that I watched that video. I've got like a street camera and everything, and I'm like,
okay,
I bet that motherfucker, you could tell, look at the clothes he's wearing. Okay, he's got jewelry on. All right, probably listens to rap. And now, I don't know, but in my opinion, I think he was looking to see if there's something worth stealing in that car.
Yeah.
Does in my opinion, make that feel any better? Does it seem like, oh, okay, well, at least he said it's just his opinion, right? Like,
no, I get what you're saying. You're gonna hate me for this, but I'm gonna give the classic leftist opinion that I think, I think there's a difference between, and you're gonna disagree with me, but I think there's a difference between making conclusions about like what I'd see an ordinary person and someone who's an arm of the state. And I guess this is like where we're gonna clash a bit, I guess.
Well, why? What is like fundamentally different that it's okay to just make a basis assumption about an individual versus a basis assumption about another individual, regardless of job or position?
Okay, that is a good question. I think this is difficult
because I think there's I think there's in your mind you're combining two things, but they need to be separated. Because I think the answer that you want to give, if I ask that slightly differently, like why can we be more critical of the cop than the black person? Well, the answer you want to jump to is like, okay, well, the cop has a lot more authority vested in him, therefore we are right to be more critical of the cop. And I would agree with you there, 100%.
Yeah.
If two people are fucking around a situation, you find out one is an officer and one isn't. Well, the officer definitely has more responsibility there. He's trained and held to a higher degree, but just because we hold two people to a different accountability doesn't mean that we can make assumptions about one and not the other. I don't think that logically follows, right? Like, yeah, cops we can be more critical of cops for sure, but that doesn't mean we should just be able to like make shit up about them if we can't make shit up about like any other person, right? That's what I would think.
Okay, I would accept that. I would accept that as a fair argument. Again, I think. Well, not again, but I think part of this problem is I think this is a leftist problem in general. This is a like leftist content creator problem in general. This is not specifically only a Vaush problem.
I think to be clear, I think this is no, I don't think so. And to be clear, I don't think this is actually a leftist problem. I think this is an everybody problem. We're talking about lefties right now because that's unfortunately what's all over the fucking internet. But like conservatives do this shit all the time when it comes to black people. This is essentially, it's funny because like this is the left's version of the he was no angel argument, right? Where like people, you know, when a black guy dies, conservatives are like frothing at the toxicology report if they can see like some trace of fucking THC in the blood. It's like, oh, he was a fucking drug addict. Like, of course this black dude was up to no good, right? But like, I feel like lefties are kind of similar, where they're like, we're scouring their faces. Like, okay, did he have one fucking post about cops or Donald Trump or Thin Blue Lines? Like, oh, he did. He was a conservative. He was an alt-righter, right? It feels like the same type of thing where there's just like everybody wants to hardcore categorize and jump to conclusions about people, and it's like, damn, like maybe we should wait for like a little bit of like a basic accounting of the facts before we start to draw conclusions about what happened, you know?
So, okay, like, yeah, I get where you're coming from. I guess on an ethical basis, I would argue that jumping to conclusions of a police officer and jumping to a conclusion of an ordinary citizen though are not the same thing. Like, I think like this is like my main problem is that I don't think you like a conservative, not because they're a conservative, but a conservative arguing about any conclusion about any ordinary person, arguing like I would even assume this to like a Trump supporter to some degree, and arguing a conclusion about a police officer. I think it's more unethical to reach a conclusion about an ordinary person than to someone who's like an arm of the state. And I think this is obviously where we're going to clash a bit.
Well, no, actually, I haven't thought about this too much. I could probably agree with you that one is probably worse than the other, but I would still say unequivocally both are bad.
Oh yeah,
That's
I can agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I can agree with that.
But so not only do I say both are bad, I wouldn't stand for either. Like both of them should be heavily discouraged. And if I say anybody doing any of this, I would, in some ways, when it comes to that one-off specific example, I would say that both of them are bad, but one can be worse than the other. But I would say that as a class of stuff that we can do, like misinformation as a whole class of stuff should be as diligently avoided as possible. But yeah, when it comes to like individual things, like for instance, like would you say it's better or worse if like a guy hits a girl versus a girl to hit a guy, right? I would say it's almost always going to be worse if a guy hits a girl just because of the level of force involved. But I will unequivocally say that both are absolutely bad and should absolutely be avoided, right? Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I can agree with you on that. Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see where you're like coming from and all of this stuff. But yeah, Ahrelevant, was there anything you wanted to pipe in and say?
I mean, you guys seem to be having a productive discussion so far, so I guess my only question would be, has your position shifted at all, or is it just like...
Okay, what position? Just so we're clear.
The position that like Vaush was in the right for making the statement and pushing back against the chatter who said that maybe we should wait for more information before we jump to a conclusion about something that we have very little information.
Okay, I will argue that Vaush, to some degree, was probably wrong, but I do think the planting one and the one where the cop is just having a mental breakdown, like I think those two things. I actually think the planting one is way more severe than the crying McDonald's cop.
Okay.
And wait, is the Swine King a size 2 creature? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Wait, you said McDonald's cop?
Yeah, so there was
the Vaush's. Did you know that video?
My Discord, not yours, I think.
Which one?
The one where a crying McDonald's cop, she only got a coffee and she was crying, and Vaush.
Oh, bullied the fuck out of her.
So I told her, I said, don't bother with the food because right now I'm too nervous to take it. It doesn't matter how many hours I've been up. It doesn't matter what I've done for anyone. Right now I'm too nervous to take a meal from McDonald's because I can't see it being made. I don't know what's going on with people nowadays, but please, just give us a break. Please just give us a break. I don't know how much more I can take. I've been in this for 15 years and I've never, ever had such anxiety about waiting for McDonald's drive-thru food. So just have a heart, and if you see an officer, just tell them thank you. Because I don't hear thank you enough anymore. All I want is just my...
The thing she was going to say at the end was, all I want are my lynchings back. Because she's a cop, you see. In reality, of course, the existence of the police, as it stands, is not a bulwark. They are not the fucking northern wall that the fucking Game of Thrones dudes man to prevent the winter or whatever, okay? They're civil servants who engage in a wide variety of police tactics, which are exorbitantly expensive and do not actually decrease crime. And their existence, at least as evidenced by, you know, the New York City Police Department taking a few weeks off and crime rates actually, you know, staying pretty much the same or even decreasing in some cases, don't seem to be as necessary to the functionality of our society as some seem to believe they are. So that's all I really have to say. The police don't want to protect American citizens. The police don't want to uphold the law. If they wanted to do either of those things, they wouldn't be behaving the way they're behaving now. What police want is limitless power. That is what the police want. That is the only thing they want. The police as an institution want to be able to drive into the low-income districts of whatever city they happen to squat in, like an occupying force, and just murder people. Not for fun, necessarily, but because it's a reification of their authority.
because they want to be able to roll into a neighborhood and know full well that anyone who approaches their car too quickly or with their hands in suspicious places can be, with full legal justification, pumped full of lead. That is what the police want. All of their behavior leads into this and nothing else. There is no justification otherwise. So I hope, and I encourage all of you to get on this, that we all make fun of her as aggressively as possible.
I guess then I would ask you, Destiny, like, when do you think that jokes or satire of this sort are not okay?
Oh, no.
Well, the question is, like, what is your goal with the humor when you're joking or satirizing something?
I will
right?
maybe
like,
kind of say that perhaps Vaush happened to be a little only slightly in the wrong.
That's interesting.
But Ahrelevant.
Yeah.
I think the satire from, at least what I understand Vaush's point, was that he thought that cops a lot of the time like to play the enemy, and they sort of have a culture that everyone hates them. And I think that was sort of why he felt, to some degree, obviously he was ethically justified in like saying the stuff that he did.
Okay. You know that it is a fact that like black people commit more crime in this country than white people, right? So like without how I won't make it thing to say. Like the problem you're getting to is that like it is impossible for a left-leaning person to throw out arguments like this without like every conservative scratching their head and being like, wait a second. If you're gonna say shit like that, then I'm gonna do like the 1350 or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know what the abbreviation is. Right?
Yeah.
Like they're gonna come at you with all those same things. This is one of the reasons why like I used to do it a lot because I thought it was funny and I thought it was joking. But it's talking about like the Mayo side and like white people on Twitter making fun of white people. Like I used to do that shit all the time. But now it's like but people on the left are unironically insane about this shit. So now it's not funny anymore because like, okay, hold on. You guys actually think that it's impossible to be racist against white people, or it's impossible for like any black person to be like racist against any white person. Like now this is like crazy. This is ridiculous. And I think you have to be really careful when you start throwing out arguments like, okay, well, cops tend to be this way. So if we see an individual cop having a bad day, we can just shit on them as hard as we want because it's funny. Because like you could run to so many bad implications with that. And your only real defenses are getting into weird esoteric areas like, well, as a class, police have this much power, and as a class, white people, so therefore, but individuals don't feel things on a class level. Nobody does. No individual feels things as a class. No white person has inherited the entire class of white privilege, much the same that no black person experiences single-handedly the entire brunt of all of like anti-black oppression in the United States, right? These things are like highly variable in how they play out in our lives. So I think I think you have to be really careful for stuff like that.
Okay, I can definitely understand where you're coming from. On whether black people commit more crime or not, I just can't answer that because I haven't like researched that, and I don't want to like say yes or no when I don't really know the answer to that.
That's fair.
Because like I guess also like when I've debated a few conservatives now, just like talking to not debate but talking to some of my conservative friends. Maybe America's different, but here it's not a statistic they bring up a lot. But maybe that's because like they're different countries. So yeah, I've not really done much research into it, but I should and I will.
Sure. Well, I mean, like that's not important. I'm just saying that, like, well, no. Oh, wait, hold on. Fuck. Okay. Let me be really clear, because even if it is the case that one group of people commits more crime, it's not okay to treat every individual like they are that entire group. Yeah. That's like the point I was trying to make. Sorry, I'm not trying to say like, well, if it is the case that black people commit more crime, we can shit on all of them. That's not what I was trying to say.
No, Destiny. I know your content like better than like.
Sure. I'm just saying that like we gotta be really careful when we do like these types of like generalizations because they can be turned against us in other ways, and then we find ourselves at a loss for like, okay, well, fuck. Well, how do I defend this behavior if we did this behavior, or how can I attack that behavior if we, support this type of behavior? That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So, like after this whole thing, I just want to ask Destiny like a couple of questions on like an unrelated stuff to the video, if that's okay.
Knock yourself
out. Okay. I guess the main question I want to ask you is, you often say you stopped debating lefties because you thought like the arguments like led to nothing. They didn't bring you that much utility. Is that correct?
Well, for a variety of ways. Like one, there's a lot of reasons why. One is that the arguments are usually dumb. They don't matter. It's stupid shit like like communism versus socialism versus anarcho-syndactic or whatever some shit. Two is because the types of people that inhabit those spaces are very quick to cancel you or like destroy your career, which is very scary to me. Those are the two reasons actually. Those three.
I can understand. I definitely think like leftists should focus more on like social democratic reforms, at least in the short term, than like arguing this type of stuff. But in saying that, do you feel that one of the reasons also you don't debate lefties is because the way they sort of treated you and cancelled you in a way, or tried to, that sort of shutted you out, so you were largely only left to some degree with being able to debate conservatives?
I mean, it might be the case that I can debate lefties if I like really try, but it's like it's at the point now where like on my Twitter, if I see somebody and I think they're like a hardcore lefty, I'll just block them, because it's just not worth it's not even worth trying to get into that type of engagement.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been blocked, but maybe I haven't said that much.
Well, be careful.
Yeah, like I completely understand that. I just think like the sad thing is that I think largely we're going, if like we want to keep having what I would consider like democratic wins, like leftists and liberals have to work together. And I just think like the way, in a way, I think the way leftists have like reacted to sort of your community has definitely been bad. And do you see like any way that you think liberals and leftists can work together in the future? Or do you think like this is just the way online politics is?
The problem is that one, leftists don't have much power in real life, and then two, they constantly act like they are the most important people, and they mean everything in the real world. So like leftists on Twitter are constantly attacking the entirety of the Democratic Party.
I think that's fairly bad.
Yeah, so like why would you want to work with these people when one, they lose all their elections, they get crushed everywhere they go, but they act like they're owed the entire world. Like why would anybody want to work with them, right? I mean, like it'd be nice if it was possible to work together, but like sometimes it seems like the goals are so conflicting that I don't know. Most lefties online seem to be incredibly ineffectual or don't understand like how to make any type of progress. It's either all or nothing for them.
Okay, what would you say like leftist goals are, do you think, and like liberals goals are? Like what do you think are the differences?
The differences? I feel like leftists just want to go farther, but I think there's a ton of overlap. Like, I think that any leftist should prefer a perfect, like, Democrat world or left-leaning world, because it would make it easy for them to push for more things. But it seems like for them, it's very much a binary. It's either all or nothing. You're either like a full-on leftist or you're a literal fascist. Like that's literally what a lot of the online conversation boils down to, which is insane. But
yeah, I definitely agree with you. I definitely think even people who like consider themselves like to be sock dems, like the squad and that, I definitely think like it seems like I argue this on, I think it was a few lefty Reddits, I argue that like the squad should just vocally, when they're running in primaries, like be more pro-Biden, you know, and I think especially with like some of maybe the people, at least in house races, strong house races, who may have voted against certain Biden policies, that arguing it from like a pro-Biden point of view, they would win more than like arguing that Biden bad sort of thing.
I disagree.
And I think that if you watch like the evolution of AOC, I think she's figured this out really well. Because because like in the beginning, she was just way too hardcore anti everything having to do with the Democratic Party. It was so cringe. But now like she's very careful, and that she will say like, this is something that I think the Democrats this is something that like the Democrats could do better. But this is something that Biden is doing that's really good, and she tries to like do this thing where she's like simultaneously like kind of trying to push them farther to the left, but she's also like pretty supportive too, which I think is really important.
Yeah. Okay, and the last question I want to ask you is, I remember you saying this a while ago, don't know if you have any thoughts on this. When I argue with certain people, I try to some degree argue, at least like on basic issues like vaccines, so forth for my family. I try to argue from the basis of like facts, but I don't know sort of how to like override the sort of like anecdotes and personal stories, and I wonder if you like have any maybe advice for me and the general when people talk about this.
Something that I found that's like super helpful now. You're not able to do this, unfortunately, or maybe you are because I don't know you well enough. But I have a kid, and when I make appeals to my child, I think it's very, very easy to beat other parents in debates like that.
Right. Okay.
So when I talk about vaccines to another parent, it's always going to be through the lens of like our most important thing on this planet is protecting our children and doing what we can to protect our children. Like, how can you not be in favor of this particular thing, or how can you not, right? Like,
okay.
and I think that way is, I think, pretty powerful generally. But
Okay, well, I guess with that said, thank you so much, Destiny. I've admired you for so long, and it's quite amazing to see you talking to me. So thanks for that.
Well, thanks a lot, buddy. Be careful.